February 11th, 2026, 1642 local time, the Gulf of Oman. The date is not a coincidence. 25 years after the attacks that reshaped American foreign policy, Iran chose this day to deliver its most devastating strike against U.S. naval forces since the USS Cole bombing in 2000. The USS Mason, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer with a crew of 323, was operating 78 nautical miles southeast of the Strait of Hormuz. Her mission: provide air defense coverage for commercial shipping transiting from the Arabian Sea to the Persian Gulf. At 1642, a Khalij Fars anti-ship ballistic missile struck the Mason's forward superstructure. Not a near miss, not fragmentation damage, a direct hit. I'm your host at U.S. Defense Review, where we analyze the military operations that shape our world. What I'm about to describe is the most serious attack on a U.S. Navy surface combatant in over 2 decades. 8 American sailors died. 31 were wounded. The ship nearly sank. And 52 minutes later, the United States launched a counterstrike that would fundamentally alter the military balance in the Persian Gulf region. This is that story. To understand how the Mason was hit, how a ship equipped with the most sophisticated air defense system in the world failed to stop a single missile, you need to understand what she was facing. The Khalij Fars is not a cruise missile. It's a ballistic missile converted for anti-ship use. The Iranians developed it from their Fateh 110 short-range ballistic missile, adding a terminal guidance seeker that can track and hit moving vessels. Specifications: range 300 kilometers, terminal velocity Mach 3, warhead 450 kilograms. The missile follows a high parabolic trajectory, up to 50 kilometers altitude, before diving toward its target. This flight profile creates problems for defenders. The AN/SPY-1D radar is optimized for aircraft and cruise missiles, targets that approach horizontally at subsonic or low supersonic speeds. Ballistic missiles approaching from high angle at Mach 3 present different challenges: shorter reaction times, steeper engagement geometries, less margin for error. The Mason could theoretically intercept a Khalij Fars. She carried SM-6 missiles capable of engaging ballistic targets, but theoretically and actually are different things in combat. At 1638, the Mason's radar detected a launch signature from the Iranian coast. Origin: somewhere in the Hormozgan province. Initial trajectory suggested a ballistic profile. Classification time: 14 seconds. The system determined the contact was a missile, not a space launch or test firing. Threat assessment: 8 seconds. The trajectory pointed toward the Mason's operating area. Weapons release authorization: 6 seconds. The tactical action officer authorized engagement. First SM-6 launch: 16:38:34, 28 seconds after initial detection. Time to impact at that moment: approximately 95 seconds. The math looks comfortable. 95 seconds is plenty of time to engage and re-engage if necessary. But the math was wrong. The Khalij Fars wasn't following a standard ballistic trajectory. Iranian engineers had modified this particular variant with a maneuvering re-entry vehicle, a warhead that could adjust its flight path during terminal approach. The first SM-6 interceptor calculated an intercept point based on the missile's predicted trajectory. That prediction assumed straight-line descent. When the Khalij Fars began maneuvering at 30 kilometers altitude, the intercept point became invalid. The SM-6 missed by 80 meters. Its proximity fuse detonated, but the Khalij Fars was outside the lethal radius. Second SM-6 launched at 16:39:02. Same problem. The guidance system couldn't predict where the Khalij Fars would be, because the Khalij Fars was changing where it would be. Miss 65 meters. Third SM-6 launched at 16:39:18. The guidance system was now updating its predictions in real time, trying to match the target's maneuvers. This intercept was closer. Missed time to impact: 18 seconds. The Mason had one more option, the Phalanx CIWS. But the Phalanx has limitations against ballistic targets. Its fire control radar is optimized for slower-moving cruise missiles. Against a target descending at Mach 3, the engagement window is measured in fractions of a second. At 16:39:53, the Khalij Fars struck the USS Mason. The impact point was the forward deck house, the structure that houses the bridge, the Combat Information Center, and various communications equipment. The 450-kilogram warhead detonated on contact. The explosion was catastrophic, but not ship-killing. The blast penetrated 3 decks before the energy dissipated. It destroyed the forward portion of the bridge. It killed 6 sailors instantly, including the ship's executive officer, Commander Thomas Wright, who had been coordinating damage control from a forward position. 2 more sailors died in the following minutes. Petty Officer First Class Angela Martinez, trapped in a collapsed passageway. Seaman David Park, struck by debris while fighting the resulting fire. 31 additional crew members were wounded, 12 critically. The ship's medical staff, 2 doctors, and 12 corpsmen were overwhelmed. The Mason was listing. Her forward compartments were flooding. Her primary communications suite was destroyed. The AN/SPY-1D radar, mounted on the forward superstructure, had taken blast damage. One of its 4 arrays was offline. Captain Sarah Chen had been in the CIC when the missile hit. The compartment was damaged but intact. She was bleeding from a laceration on her forehead. A piece of shattered display screen had struck her during the impact. She had seconds to assess the situation. Ship status: damaged, but afloat. Propulsion: intact. Weapons: degraded, but functional. Communications: severely compromised. Crew: mass casualties requiring immediate attention. Her instinct was to focus on saving her ship and her people. That's what any captain would do. That's what training dictated. But Captain Chen also understood something else. The Iranians had just killed 8 of her sailors. They had struck the first direct hit on a U.S. warship since the Cole. They were watching right now. Satellites, drones, coastal observers, waiting to see what America would do. If she focused purely on damage control, the message was clear. Hit us hard enough, and we stop fighting. That message was unacceptable. At 16:44, 5 minutes after the impact, Captain Chen made a decision that would later be described as either brilliant or reckless, depending on who was doing the describing. She ordered her weapons officer to begin targeting the missile launch site. The Mason's Tomahawk missiles were housed in the aft vertical launch system, undamaged by the forward hit. Her fire control systems were degraded, but operational. She could still shoot. The problem: she didn't have precise coordinates for the launch site. The Khalij Fars had launched from somewhere in a 40-kilometer stretch of coastline. Somewhere wasn't good enough for precision strikes. She needed targeting data, and her primary communication systems were destroyed. But not all her communication systems. The Mason carried a satellite communication terminal on her aft mast, a backup system rarely used but still functional. Her communications technicians rigged an improvised antenna while fire crews battled flames forward. At 16:51, Captain Chen established contact with 5th Fleet Headquarters in Bahrain. Her message was terse. Mason hit. 8K IA confirmed. 30+ wounded. Ship fighting but damaged. Request immediate strike authorization and targeting data for launch site. Ready to execute. Vice Admiral James Richardson had been monitoring the situation since the first radar contact. He knew the Mason was hit. He knew sailors were dead. He didn't know the ship could still fight. Chen's message changed everything. A damaged American warship, crew bleeding and dying, asking permission to shoot back. The symbolism was powerful. The tactical situation was complicated. Richardson had targeting data that Chen lacked. The USS Baton, an amphibious assault ship operating 150 miles south, had been tracking the Khalij Fars launch with her own sensors. Her radar had a better angle on the Iranian coast. Her computers had calculated a probable launch point with 200-meter accuracy. That wasn't precision guidance. Tomahawk missiles need coordinates within 10 meters for optimal effect. But it was enough to define a target area. At 16:58, Richardson transmitted targeting data to the Mason. He also transmitted something else, authorization for expanded strike package. The logic: if the Iranians had one Khalij Fars battery in the area, they probably had more. Intelligence had identified 3 suspected sites within 50 kilometers of the probable launch point. Destroying one wouldn't eliminate the threat. Richardson authorized strikes on all 3 suspected sites, plus the confirmed launch area. He also authorized the baton to launch AV-8B Harriers for post-strike damage assessment. At 17:04, the USS Mason, listing burning her forward section a charnel house of dead and wounded, began launching Tomahawk missiles. The first TLAMs left their cells at 17:04:22. 4 missiles targeted at the confirmed launch area. They would fly a circuitous route to avoid Iranian air defenses, reaching target in approximately 28 minutes. The second salvo launched at 17:07, 8 missiles targeting the 3 suspected sites. Simultaneously, the guided missile cruiser USS Hugh City, operating 90 miles west, added her own contribution. 12 Tomahawks. Different approach vectors. Overwhelming force. Total strike package: 24 Tomahawk cruise missiles targeting 4 Iranian military installations. The Mason continued fighting her fires while her missiles flew. At 17:21, the damage control teams reported the flooding contained. The list stabilized at 7 degrees. The fires were being pushed back. At 17:26, the ship's surgeon reported casualty status. 8 confirmed dead. 3 more critical. Prognosis uncertain. 28 wounded with varying degrees of severity. At 17:32, the first Tomahawk reached its target. The confirmed launch area was a mobile missile battery hidden in a ravine 6 kilometers from the coast. Camouflage netting, dispersed vehicles, approximately 40 personnel. The Tomahawk approached at low altitude, following terrain contours that had been pre-programmed based on satellite mapping. Its guidance system compared stored images with real-time observations, adjusting course to maintain precision. Impact: within 3 meters of calculated aim point. The launcher vehicle that had fired the Khalij Fars was destroyed. 3 more Tomahawks struck the same area in rapid succession. The command vehicle, the support trucks, the ammunition storage. Secondary explosions confirmed the presence of additional missiles. The battery had been reloading when the Tomahawks arrived. Those missiles would never launch. At 17:34, missiles began arriving at the secondary targets. The first suspected site was legitimate. A Fateh 313 battery. Different missile type, but equally dangerous. 2 Tomahawks destroyed the launchers. 2 more destroyed the associated equipment. The second suspected site was partially legitimate. One of the targeted coordinates contained actual military equipment. The other contained agricultural machinery that satellite analysts had misidentified. 2 Tomahawks on military targets, 2 Tomahawks on farming equipment. The third suspected site was empty. The battery that intelligence believed was there had relocated 72 hours earlier. Iranian tactical security was improving. 4 Tomahawks cratered vacant terrain. The Hugh City's missiles arrived between 1738 and 1745. They struck redundant targets. The Iranians had already learned that American strikes came in waves. The additional missiles ensured destruction, but didn't expand the target set. At 1734, 52 minutes after the Khalij Fars struck the Mason, the counterstrike was complete. Results: 1 confirmed Khalij Fars battery destroyed. 1 confirmed Fateh 313 battery destroyed. 2 suspected sites destroyed with mixed results. Estimated Iranian casualties: 80 to 120 personnel. The Mason's crew learned of the strike results while treating their wounded. Captain Chen announced over the ship's intercom, damaged but functional, that the battery responsible for their casualties had been eliminated. The announcement was met with grim satisfaction. Revenge is not doctrine, but it is human. The ship made way toward Bahrain at reduced speed. Her forward section was a wreck. It would require months of repair. But she was afloat. She was fighting, and she had struck back. The journey took 14 hours. Helicopters evacuated the most critically wounded during the transit. One sailor, Petty Officer Second Class Michael Torres, died en route despite the surgeon's best efforts. The final death toll, 9. The diplomatic response was predictable in its intensity. Iran called the attack defensive, claiming the Mason had violated Iranian territorial waters. They demanded reparations. They threatened to close the Strait of Hormuz entirely. The United States released sensor data showing the Mason was in international waters throughout the engagement. The Pentagon displayed the Khalij Fars debris recovered from the ship's wreckage. The White House called the Iranian attack unprovoked murder. The UN Security Council convened. Russia vetoed a resolution condemning Iran. China abstained. No action was taken. But the real consequence wasn't diplomatic. It was military. The September 11th attack demonstrated that Iranian missiles could hit American warships. Not just near-miss damage. Direct hits. Kills. The American response demonstrated something else. Even a damaged ship, a ship with dead sailors and burning compartments, could strike back. The capacity for retaliation wasn't concentrated in distant carriers or land bases. It was distributed across the fleet. Every ship was a shooter. The calculus of deterrence shifted again. Iran had proven they could hurt American ships. America had proven that hurting was mutual, and that American retaliation came fast, came hard, and came from the ship you just hit. Whether that knowledge would prevent future attacks or provoke them remained uncertain. What was certain? 9 American families received folded flags and condolence letters. The Mason spent 8 months in repair before returning to service. Captain Chen received the Navy Cross for her actions during and after the attack. And in the Gulf of Oman, the water held new ghosts. American sailors, Iranian missile operators, casualties of a war that wasn't called a war. The Mason is at sea again now. Her crew is new. Many of the survivors transferred to other commands, their memories of September 11th too fresh for continued service. Her mission is unchanged. Presence, protection, deterrence. The Iranians still have Khalij Fars missiles. They still have the will to use them. The next engagement could come tomorrow. 52 minutes. That's how long it took a wounded ship to transform from victim to avenger. Less than an hour to absorb catastrophic damage, establish communications, receive targeting data, and execute a strike that destroyed the forces responsible. In the history of naval warfare, that's unprecedented. Ships that take direct hits usually focus on survival, not counterattack. The Mason did both. That's the message. Hit us and we hit back. Hit us hard and we hit back harder. And we do it before you finish celebrating. Whether that message brings peace or war remains to be seen. What we know is this. On September 11th, 2026, Iran killed 9 American sailors. And 52 minutes later, they paid a price. Stay informed. Stay vigilant. I'll see you in the next one.